Many of today's top visual effects artists worked in conjunction with Lucas to create the special effects in Star Wars. Harrison Ellenshaw was a matte painter for the film.
The original concept for Star Wars was included the idea of an effects facility. Well, at the time, there were no real effects facilities as there are today. And so George Lucas felt that it was important that somehow he gathered together a team of people who could set up a place and provide the effects for a film called Star Wars. I was contacted at that time to see if I would do some matte paintings for Star Wars, and I said yes, I'd be very interested, knowing that this was the man who'd done American Graffiti, and I thought it'd be kind of fun. And they said it's going to be a B-movie, science fiction kind of thing. Well, at Disney at the time, I wasn't working on that type of thing, and I saw this as a little bit of, not necessarily a challenge, but something interesting to do. But when I first went out there, and I went out and I worked nights, I basically moonlighted at what was called then Industrial Light Magic, and it was in Van Nuys. And you would walk into this place, and it was very informal, to say the least. The screening room was a projector in the room. There were some couches that were, taken from Goodwill or directly off the street. But, as the old saying goes, somebody said, well, don't give up your day job if you go to work on the Star Wars, because who knows how that's going to do. And the success of Star Wars, many people at the time said, that film was so great because of the effects. Wrong. It's a great story.
Dennis Muren has won 7 Oscars for his special effects work. Muren, like Ellenshaw, contributed to the special effects work in Star Wars.
Ever since I was a kid, I was always excited about putting these images together, these pieces together to make these scenes. Scenes that you can't see in real life, that are just too incredible or fantastic or far away. You can't get to them to see them. And I don't know what it is. It was just always something that this has driven me to want to do this work and put in, these long, ridiculous hours we do. Movies are part of a bigger thing. The work we do is a few minutes in a 2-hour movie. And it's important that that entire movie be viewed as one whole experience, that the audience doesn't get distracted. There's a danger in this business of the special effects dominating the story. And one of my jobs is to remind my colleagues all the time that what we're doing is we're making one small part of a big movie. For Star Wars, my son, who's 5 years old, is discovering them now for the first time. And I haven't seen them since they came out. So I've kept a distance on them. And now I'm going through the series and learning them one at a time, actually through a kid's eyes sitting right next to me. And as I was doing him, I couldn't, I was too close to it to tell, but seeing him now, there's just an incredible imagination work and an incredible transportation to another world and this incredible feeling that you were on this ride whether you want to be or not.
Visual effects artist Richard Edlund won an Academy Award for his work on Star Wars. He also created a motion control system that gave movement to the miniature space vehicles. Here's Richard Edlund to explain.
Star Wars came along and I had the opportunity to build a full-fledged system up from scratch, basically, because when I started there was nothing but a card table and a telephone on it. So we had to acquire equipment to building pretty high-tech solid-state memory that enabled us to do motion control, which was the whole key to making the shots look like they did for Star Wars. Your edges are defined by the technology that you have available, and there are certain limitations that are there. And essentially, it's like an old Chinese adage from Confucius, where you take the disadvantage and you make it work for you. And that, I think, is like one of the axioms that we always use, is that if you have a disadvantage, there's got to be some way of turning it to your advantage.
It took the combined talents of visual effects artists to create the groundbreaking effects in Star Wars, making this film a milestone in the evolution of special effects. Effects are used in the 1992 release The Lawnmower Man. This film explores a relatively new technology called virtual reality. We spoke to Mark Malmberg of Chaos Incorporated to find out how computers were used to create the special effects for the film.
My description of virtual reality is probably a little different than most people, but really what people understand as virtual reality with the helmet and the glove is a very natural evolution of media technology, and so in my mind you can go back to a cave painting or whatever, and that's a representation of something that otherwise would not have been part of that reality. That painting enables you to enter somebody else's vision and to experience what someone else has experienced.
In order to create this alternate reality, specially designed computer software was used. This presented a unique challenge to Malmberg and the special effects crew at Chaos.
Each scene that we created for Lawnmower Man had very definite technical challenges. One example is the particulation scene, which a lot of people are curious about. And that was a scene which didn't necessarily use new and unknown technologies, but it was a case where the animator was able to use the technology that we had in a very creative way, used our 3D animation software to create a sort of particle system with texture mapped objects that whirled away. And that, you know, from a technical standpoint, it's a use of existing technology to do something that wasn't existing.
To create this effect, the actors were first photographed in front of a blue screen. The actors' images were then digitized by computer and composited into the scene.
One of the scenes which I actually believe to be have been one of the more challenging scenes was the shots that Hayden Landis, one of our animators, worked on, which portray Job's point of view when he's receiving the treatments. One animator had to spend 6 months in front of a screen making these shots where he was flying down into this spiral vortex of sacred geometries and strange symbols.
This scene shows us Pierce Brosnan's point of view through the virtual reality apparatus. In order to create this effect, visual effects technicians first created computer-generated wireframe models of the various elements in the scene. The frames are then covered with computer-generated skins that provide a surface to the wireframes. The surfaces are then smoothed out and highlights are added. The results are a stunning example of computer-generated special effects.
A lot of the symbols and structures in those shots were actually have the intent of having a physiological effect on the viewer. In Lawnmower Man, we did make very definite attempts to have strong impact on the viewer through whatever was happening in each scene. In these scenes where Job was experiencing the treatments and the bombardment of icons and sacred geometries, we did everything we could to make that a real experience for the viewer. And the spiral, which is the foundation of those scenes, is a hypnotic, transcendental sort of form, and it induces a definite alteration of your state of mind. If you sit and look at a spiral turning, it's hypnotic. And so we did as much as we could in those scenes to really make them have a physiological impact on the viewer.
The Lawnmower Man, with its computer-generated images, represents the future of special effects in the movies. Visual effects artists can now use computer technology to create images never before seen in any film. Films like The Lawnmower Man have only scratched the surface of computer animation. As special effects enters a new era, computers will continue to be an exciting and powerful tool in the creation of new and innovative special effects.